how should the Republican Party reach out to Latino and Hispanic voters, considering that a great majority of us are actually conservatives? I'm one of the few Latinas in my community that are actually Republican, and when I reach out to my community, I'm labeled a racist and a traitor. So how should the Republican Party reach out to a community that is actually a very big market for the ideology that the Republican Party stands for? And a follow-up question to that, if it's okay. Can you sign my very first Ben Shapiro?
Yeah, I'll sign that for you. As far as the first question, I spoke at the California Republican Party convention in 2012, 2011, 2012, somewhere in there. And one of the things that I said at the podium is that as many of us as possible should work on learning Spanish. This is not to say that folks who don't speak Spanish shouldn't learn English. They obviously should, so that we can speak the same language. But the language of conservatism is not relegated to English. The language of ideas spans all languages. So the first thing we can do is actually communicate in a language that folks speak in. So that would be helpful. Now, the second thing that we can do is, as I said before, when we see racism, when we see things that are racially tinged, we should forcibly call them out and separate off from them. And that's important to do, because otherwise it lends credence to the lie that Democrats like to promulgate, that folks on the right are racist. The third thing that we have to do is we actually have to talk about what are the central priorities. So I've seen some conflicting polls about the Hispanic community that are kind of interesting. So more socially conservative, but also more in favor of government services than some other immigrant communities in the United States. And so we sort of have to recognize that as a fundamental truth. But I really believe that for every community, what has to be reinforced is that in a free society, you're either going to be dependent on private industry or you're going to be dependent on government. And this is where in a state like California, it's actually deeply imperative that we reach out and we go into particularly impoverished communities of every race. And what we do is we make clear opportunities for them from the private sector. So for example, I think that we should be going in and paying people's bus tickets and first month's rent to go get a job in an area where they can get a job. I think that major corporations should be going into areas and saying to young students, listen, you get straight A's, we'll pay for your college, and then you come work for us for 3 years. Right? There are programs that exist like this for some major corporations. Now, all of this would be changing the math a little bit. But the first thing you have to do is you have to forcibly fight back on the idea that you're a racist. So, I mean, honestly, my response when somebody says that I'm a racist is, you're a jackass, pardon the language. And the reason that I say that is because you cannot grant them the premise that it is even rational to call you a racist. Right? You have to say it makes you a bad person to call me a racist without evidence. Once we take that off the table, we can talk policy. But if you're going to make a character attack on me, I'm not going to sit here and take that, and I'm not interested in having a conversation with you.
Amen.